Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. Welcome to the Conquering Your Clownfish podcast. Today is a fun episode. In fact, just a brief episode. Honestly, more of an introduction into some new and exciting things that are happening with the podcast. Joining me is my dear friend, Misty Coy Snyder. Misty was actually the third guest on Conquering Your Clownfish. We're over 60 episodes now, so this is a blast from the past and dear friend for sure. Welcome, Misty.
Thanks, Brady, and congratulations on, 60 plus episodes. That's a lot of work. Well
Time
done.
flies when you're having fun.
I'll say.
So as I shared, this is less of an episode and more of an update for our listeners. Going back to the inception of Conquering Your Clownfish, really, as I talked about this project with the team, from the very beginning, I always knew that I wanted to have a co-host. I wanted somebody to be able to come on and provide amazing insights and carry these conversations along. And after more than 2 years and many, many episodes, I have exactly the right person that I want to be able to invite to become my co-host. And that's Misty. And so we've talked about that. And I thought, what a great way to be able to introduce this concept and idea and to have Misty on the show again and us be able to visit a little more about this.
Yeah, and it's super exciting, Brady, because how cool to have a dad in our community and a mom in our community who are in different stages age-wise. Obviously, you have the adoption piece, and I have a big piece of new moms, right? New moms and families coming on the scene with my son just about to turn 5 in a couple months. So we're really bringing a neat sort of combination of experiences together, and I think it will just make it super rich and just add to the conversation, don't you think?
Most definitely. It really is. And I still feel like I'm part of the young game when it comes to raising kids with a disability, and I realize I'm not. And I look at this rising generation of these toddlers and their amazing parents and the caregivers that are taking care of them, and they are changing the face of what this looks like in caregiving in this year and in 2025. And I'm super thankful to gain that perspective by having such an amazing co-host with me. You know, we had the opportunity to spend time together when we went to Armenia in October of last year. And we had our Rods Heroes team there. Andrea was with us, and just an amazing experience. And it was then that I really got to know you. And I said, this is somebody that I'd love to be able to spend more time with and somebody that I'd really like to learn from. So what a special way to be able to do that.
It really is. And I think that was the time. I mean, I feel we had been connected for quite a while, but that was really the time just getting to meet you and Andrea and your mission in action, really, and just the work that you guys have been doing. And I think, as you were saying, you see the younger generation in terms of younger kids. I look to you and Andrea and those who've gone before you as, wow, look at all the groundwork that's been laid. And look at what I get to look forward to and I get to move towards. And that trip to Armenia just blew my mind and really, really just sort of exploded the possibilities in my mind and heart as to what our community needs to grow and thrive and just change the world, right?
Most definitely. Something that really was unique and special about our conversations and that I saw right out of the gates with you is this mindset of abundance. This idea that all boats rise with a rising tide. And you look at our community within the Down syndrome community, you look at our community within the greater disability community, and we all could use a friend. We all could use an advocate. We all could use an ally. And that's something that I just loved about you, Misty, is you are that advocate. You are that ally. And that really attracted me to just that concept of all boats rise with the rising.
Yes. And I think that you really, truly, Brady, you were embodying that from the get-go. And I think that it takes sort of an intentionality of, okay, we all want to grow and thrive together in this community, but we have to be intentional about how we do that so that it's not just me and my family, which we all need to focus on our own families, of course, but that in the greater scheme of things, when we're advocating and when we're pushing for change and awareness and inclusion and all the things that we want so desperately for our children, we have to see the bigger picture. And I think you and I are so aligned in that this is not a competition. This is not a who beats who. This is a we all win when these changes begin to take place. And I think it's a really exciting thing when that synergy starts to come together and you go, "Oh, yes, this is what we're doing." And that's why I'm so excited to do this, Brady, because I think that it gives us a space to really hopefully practice what we preach and you've been so great at bringing people from all walks of life all over the place onto your show and continuing to do that and beyond.
Well, we're just getting started. And so over the last couple of years, we've had dozens of amazing guests who are embodying that idea of growth, that idea of team, that idea of community that have been guests on this show. And we hope to continue this trend for many years to come. And so going forward for our listeners, there will be some episodes that Misty will be the lone star driving the guest and the conversation and having an amazing conversation. There'll be other episodes where I'll be the only host that's on there. And then there'll be some episodes that we do together that will have a guest or a number of guests on and just really do more of a panel discussion and seeking to be able to learn and to grow together. I'm excited about this continuation of Conquering Your Clownfish, and I couldn't have asked for a better co-host than you, Misty.
You know what? Thank you. And I completely agree. And for such a time as this, I think that these kinds of things happen at just the right time. So we're in the right time for this.
Most definitely. Misty and I have a lot of fun things that we're working on together for our community and things that we'll be talking about. And so stay tuned and continue to follow along. Misty's such a great Instagrammer. I'm aspiring to try and tell the stories that Misty's telling, and she's incredible that way. So continue to follow along, keep an eye out for some of these exciting updates that we have. But good things to come for the disability community, good things to come for the caregivers that are out there as we all strive to conquer our clownfish. So welcome to the team, Misty.
Can't wait. Welcome to another episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. I'm Misty Coy Snyder, and I'm thrilled to be joining Brady as a co-host. Today, we are honored to be joined by two incredible individuals, international artists, advocates, and visionaries, Ela and Larry Hershberger. As the founders of Masterpiece Artwork and the Don't Fear Me Foundation, Ela and Larry have taken their personal journey as parents of a daughter born with Down syndrome and transformed it into a global movement of compassion, truth, and beauty. Their daughter, Anna Rose, has been the heart and soul behind their mission. Through deeply emotional and breathtaking artwork, their campaign, Don't Fear Me, shines a light on the value, strength, and limitless potential of individuals born with Down syndrome. So without further ado, welcome, Ela and Larry. It's so wonderful to see you.
Yay. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Been looking forward to this.
Yes.
Me too. It's such a joy. And I have to say, from one artist from another to another, it's just so lovely to sit here with you. I would just love to hear more about your life before Ela and how it sort of laid the groundwork for what you're doing now. Could you share some of that?
Well, both Ella and I have been artists our whole life. It's not only been my passion, but it's been how I've made my living. So, once you find your path, right, you really stick with it. So, yeah, I mean, I've been a portrait artist for a very, very long time and I love, not just love art, because I do, but I love portrait art because I do like to show people's personality, but in maybe a little different way, because it's not just a picture. The way Ella and I think about portrait art is it's more, I guess, by calling it portrait art is the best way to put it.
We both have been portrait artists before we had Anna Rose. So we had separate companies. And then when we met with each other, then we decided to combine. So that's like, that's when the masterpiece was born. We have a masterpiece artwork that we both own. And it's been a great journey. But, everything changed when I got pregnant with Anna Rose. And I have two other daughters, Ela and Juliet. They are teenagers now. So it's a fun journey. But when I got pregnant with Anna Rose, the pregnancy journey was just so different. And unfortunately, nobody acknowledged her life with joy. It was really hard to go through that pregnancy because we were asked several times on the way if we should, that it's still time to abort, that did you make the decision about terminating your baby? And that was hard. That was hard to the point that we made a decision to, let's just let go of the doctors and trust in God. And we're not going to question the gift that God gave us. So she was born in a hospital by the doctor that was on call that day. And I don't even know her name. Don't even remember her name. But it was just so sad because, they give us all of this worst case scenario during the pregnancy. It's, oh, there's a huge hole in her heart. There's diabetes, there's this, there's that, this, just a long list. That was, I think, the most humble moment for me in my life, sitting in that cold office, and they just give you, list of this. And in the end of that long list, they are like, okay, so you have time to terminate. You have 2 weeks to make your decision. I need to know by this time that day. And we just looked at each other at that moment and we're like, okay, we are not terminating the baby. But even though we told them we're not doing this, the question was keep coming up. And when she was born, instead of saying, congratulations, your baby's here, she's alive, we were told, I'm sorry, she has Down syndrome. And, I looked up at the nurse and I'm like, I don't care. Is she alive? Oh, it's okay. So that's how she was born. And that pain, it kind of stayed with us. And I thought, during pregnancy that, okay, we are on our own here. We just gonna have to get through this because there's so much fear and misconception about Down syndrome that, we just have to get through this journey. It's gonna be tough, but we're gonna make it. But then the next day when she was in the NICU, a little package arrived right by her incubator. And it was a package from our local group, Down syndrome group. And it said, Friends, yes. And it said big letters, congratulations, and all kinds of little gifts for Anna Rose, little blanket and onesie and, a few goodies. And I was like, oh, well, that's so lovely. And, from there on, there was so many people that came to us, through this Down syndrome community, through other families, through just random people, in the store. And we're like, wow, this is not what we thought it's going to be. That fear just went away. And our little girl, she's such a light in our life, and that's when we decided to advocate and we decided to do something about this.
She's standing on your shoulder, Larry.
She
Yes.
is. You can see how beautiful she is. She's adorable. And I tell you, her personality is exactly like you see in that picture. It's adorable. She'll wake up in the morning and just look at the world, and the first thing out of her mouth is, wow. That's the way she starts every day.
I wish I could wake up like that.
So many times I still hear that term, you still have time to terminate. And I can't imagine not having her in my life. I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even try to picture it because she's so much part of our life. She inspires so many people. She's done so many things in her short little 3.5 years. I can't even imagine where she's going with all of this. I mean, it's crazy. So who are we not to fight for her? Right? And fight for others.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Along the journey of beginning this, because the journey started out to be, let's photograph from birth to as old as we can find individuals with Down syndrome and photograph their personality and not their diagnosis. Right. And the reason, and that's not to say that we're afraid of the diagnosis, but I know there's a person there. There's a person there, and there's a spirit, and there's a beauty and an elegance and a handsomeness and it's all there. But when we Googled Down syndrome, when we first got the news, that's not what we saw. It's almost like people were trying to photograph the diagnosis. So that visually, that's what you saw. But that's not what we see every day in our home.
Right. Right.
We see our little girl. And I know that every parent is the same. So after we photographed these initial 15 families, the individuals, we learned a lot from the parents of those 15 individuals. And they were between 70 and newborn. We learned that the mission was much greater than creating one exhibit to show the beauty of individuals with Down syndrome. We really saw that there's a much, much bigger need here, that we were the face of the visual part of this. Because there hasn't, according to NDSS, they've never seen an advocacy via art.
Not like that, yes. But we met with those 100 families, because right now we photograph over 100 families. And we realized, it's not just our story. There's so many other families out there that has very similar story. And, we're like, well, we got to do something about it. We can't just stop on the, 15 pieces of art and just...
Doesn't tell enough of the problem. It doesn't solve enough of the issue.
That's right.
I mean, then, as you photograph all these people, you start to hear so many things. And so it kind of is the inspiration to dig further on our end.
Yes.
And study. You find out how huge the percentage is in America of abortion. And that, there's a lot of pressure on the parents, sometimes from the father, sometimes always from the doctor. And it's this pressure on the mother. And eventually it's like, okay, we'll abort. And so many of those mothers regret that so deeply.
Right. Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head in so much of what you just said, but just the don't fear me part.
Right.
When so much of this is, I would say probably 100% of it is based in fear. You fear what you don't know. You fear what you haven't experienced. And when you talked about the Google search, I have experienced that myself, where you see sort of a technical medical perspective of something, and you just see those possibilities of what could go wrong, and you see those sort of black and white list of things, and the light and the spirit and the essence of our children isn't remotely captured. You look at the photo of your beautiful daughter behind you, and she's emanating light. She's jumping off of the canvas. And that's not even in real life. When you're in the presence of somebody and you feel that spirit, no Google search could capture that.
She would walk right up to you and she'd go, "Oh, hi. How did you do it?"
Can you imagine if everyone was that way?
Right.
Exactly.
Well, I have Ella and I together after photographing 100 families, and we're far from done. But I can tell you one of the things that we've learned. Every age, doesn't matter whether they're a baby or they're 68, but every age, there's a magic to the individual that has Down syndrome. Every age. There's a magic to them. When they enter a room, when they walk up to you, talk to you, or they give you a hug. I mean, I'll give a good example. We take Honor Rose to Publix with us to go shopping for food. Every person behind every counter comes out to go, "Oh, Honor Rose, how are you, Honor Rose? Hi." Right? Well, you don't see that with any other children. But they all come out to greet her and give her a hug and say hi. Like, there's just a magic. And I thought, well, maybe that's just our baby. That's the way I like to think. Well, the reality is, after photographing all these families, we realized it's not just our baby.
There's really nothing to fear. And that's why that name came along, because we realized the problem is the fear.
Yes.
And reality is there's nothing to fear. Because, there's always, during the pregnancy, we heard that so much, like, okay, well, the siblings will suffer, the family is going to fall apart, she's not going to go to college. What kind of life you're going to give her? Selfish by doing this to, your family. All those bad things. It's like, oh, she's going to be vegetables. Like, why are you putting yourself through it? She's going to be stillborn. All that. And then she's born, and she's this beautiful miracle. And, it for us, it's just the beginning, because it's just 3 years that she's, here on earth. But, by meeting these other families, over 100 families, all different ages, we realized it's actually nothing to fear.
Yes. That's right.
Even, yes, there is a spectrum, of course. So there's some individuals with Down syndrome that, are are a little bit more verbal, for example. They can walk faster, they can do things quicker. And then there's, another ones that, they might not walk, but the love doesn't change.
Right.
Those families, those moms, they feel exactly the same about this child and that child.
Yes.
That
or
family
that
doesn't
adult,
fear that adult. Yes.
or
Right.
that adult.
The fear is not there.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, and another aspect that we found out, and I'll quickly say this, I'm sorry you cut you off there, is, we met, when you meet individuals with Down syndrome, they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s, it's a different game. And you talk to the parents, and a really good set of parents that I really just found were lovely people. Their son is in his mid 60s. He said, the mother said, if Kevin would have had the therapies that were available today, if he would have been more included in education like they have today, if there's so many things that are part of today that were not part of his life 65 years ago.
Yes.
And yet they've nurtured him through all of that. If you saw him, you would have to say, yes, I see Down syndrome, but you wouldn't know him. The uneducated person would maybe fear him. For
Right.
what reason? I don't know. But when you get to know him, I've never met anyone that does more advocacy globally than him. He's on his computer. He's computer literate. He's on his computer. He works with a network of nuns around the world to advocate for those with special needs. I mean, and that's the person you don't even want to come and give a hug.
I know. Well, when you take that, when you really reveal that, when you unpeel that onion of, wow, the root
Yes.
of it is fear, and then you hand opportunity to families and to individuals, that's when the blossoming really starts to happen. Because, I feel like for so many years we were just hiding, squelching, pushing down, ashamed. There was just so much shame shrouding disability surrounding it,
And
and as we have hopefully progressed and continue to progress, those layers will continue to be peeled back. But I'm curious, as an artist myself, a performing artist, I've noticed so much has changed within me in my work professionally as a singer and an actor and a writer. I'm curious to know if you've noticed things, you've touched on it a little bit, but internally, as you're working on these profound projects, what happens to you as an artist? You've lived this very accomplished life as artist, but now you have this new perspective or this new vision, right? And so I'm just curious internally what you've noticed.
That's when we start crying.
I'll let you take that first, and then I'll add on to it.
It's it changed. It changed a lot. Like you said, we've been doing art for our whole life, and successful art, and we made that out as our career. But working with individuals with Down syndrome is different, in a good way.
In a good way.
In an amazing way, because we feel like after we have a long weekend, we photograph a lot of families, and we feel that after we turn off the camera, our cup is full. We don't.
You're not exhausted.
We don't feel drained. We are like excited,
At the end of a full long weekend that's fully booked. I mean, you should be, because I've experienced it. You should be exhausted physically and emotionally.
Yeah, 15 hours later,
but you're neither.
We're still chatting like, have you seen, what
Unbelievable.
this and that? We're just so excited. And we found this to be our mission, like our purpose in life, And Anna Rose was the inspiration of the beginning. She was that little seed that, started this. But, after meeting all these families, we realized, the fight is not only for Anna Rose.
No, it's much, much bigger.
The fight is for, for Kevin, for Abigail, for Brody, for all of those beautiful families and individuals
and
that we met.
All those that are unborn.
Yes.
We need to bring their magic into this life, bring their life to reality. And I believe that Ela and I have a purpose now creating our artwork. So when we are actually working on a piece, let alone photographing, when we're bringing a piece of artwork to life, it's not just, this is going to be a really pretty piece of art. I am thinking this could save a child's life. So you give it 110% of all of your being It's changed. It's so changed. I mean, when have I ever had an opportunity as an individual, and let alone together as a foundation, to really truly save a life? I mean, we love the fact that we're changing people's perspectives, and we get emails from people saying that after following you and seeing your artwork on Don't Fear Me, I suddenly felt my heart change and melt. It softened. That was the word.
Yeah,
It softened. And I suddenly started to feel love. I remember writing back to that person saying, now, that's wonderful, but what are you going to do with that newfound love? So she said, I'm going to go. There was a 14-year-old girl in her church that has Down syndrome that always tried to give her a hug, and she always walked the other way. She said, this time I'm going to give her a hug. Right?
Yeah.
Now, that's not saving a life, but it leads to saving a life because it does change the perception. And so the mission is huge, because if you've still got an entire medical community that are all still to this day, after all we know, and they're still advocating for abortion, well, we are the other side of that, advocating for not.
Well, it's not really advocating. Let's correct that. They are legally have to give you the option that you can terminate. So they have to tell you worst case scenario, and in the end of that, they have to tell you how long do you have to terminate. But legally, there's nowhere there, or they don't even know what to say, the other side, So you go home after getting that diagnosed, and you're searching on Google, and nothing good comes up. So we want to change this. We want to be able to have a QR code with every doctor, the professional that has to give that diagnosed, and say, okay, this is the worst case scenario. You have time to terminate. Now, look at other families that are going through the same journey.
I wanted to say the joy of Down syndrome. There's a QR code, right?
So they make a decision on both sides. Not only on one side.
You should not be putting parents in a position to make a life and death decision with only half the information.
That's right. That's right.
It's not
How
fair.
is that empowering families if you don't have the opportunity to even hear a story like yours or like mine or anything on the positive?
It's just not fair.
And it's a crime, really, because
Agreed.
I spoke on the phone to multiple families right after I was given the diagnosis. And that was the game changer, because you needed to hear and see and taste the goodness and the joy as you describe. Well, no article can do that. No doctors, even if they're well-meaning, they can't do that if they don't have personal experience. And so to bring the mission that you are bringing is so important. I'm good friends with Ashley at Friends, and I loved how you described how that made such a difference. The celebrating, the welcome to your beautiful baby, welcome to the world. Here are resources. Here's a way to celebrate. It changes the whole tone of a diagnosis and of a life, and it's life altering work. And I'm curious if you ever in your wildest dreams would have imagined before your daughter was born that you would be on such a trajectory. Could you have ever envisioned?
We did photograph individuals with special needs.
I've never had any fear.
So, we had experience with that. But yes, doing this journey, it's amazing. And there's no fear.
Yeah, I've always accepted in any individuals. Prior to meeting Ela at my studio, I had photographed special needs and always said yes. And I'm telling, there's some that where the child couldn't even move a muscle, and they said, "Is there a chance that we can do a portrait?" I'm like, "Absolutely, bring that child in." Right? I mean, I think Ela. That's one of the things that brought Ela and I together is that we have a heart for those that need help, or those that need to be shown.
Yes.
Right? Of who they really are, not what people think they are.
Yes. Yeah.
So, that's been I think the strength that has happened because Ela and I joined together, and now we're doing this foundation as a team. I think it's really, really created a power that individually we couldn't. And the fact that we've had a child together that has Down syndrome, I think that's a God thing.
Absolutely.
Oh
Right.
yeah, I think everything boils down to God. He prepared us to be right now where we are and have all those skills, very unique, different skills, that we can put together to create this masterpiece of individuals with Down syndrome, blessed with Down syndrome. So it's been a journey that God is putting in front of us one step at a time, and we
Yes.
just follow. We are just so excited. Recently we just looked at each other, and we're like, well, this is taking over. What now? And we looked at each other and we're like, we can't stop. you
Hmm.
know
Keep on going.
there's no stopping. We just, we see
Yeah.
the next step and the next step and the next step, and we're like,
The path is being laid out in front of
it's
us.
been
Yes.
Who are we
yes.
not to follow? And that's a good point because, I've been really blessed to have many, many great conversations with dads. And unfortunately, in many cases, dads are sorely missing out of the equation. And we're going to try to address that too with the dad's tab on our page. I think that's pretty important because I think a lot of dads do fear that it's not the perfect child that they thought they were going to get. But what they don't realize, they're getting the perfect imperfection and the magic of Down
Yes.
syndrome, right?
Yes.
So, I've been really blessed to have some conversations with some very great dads. And those dads have brought me a lot of knowledge about what it meant to them. And there's a power there.
Yes.
I think there's a message there that if we can get to the dads and moms, but if we can get to the dads early on,
Yes.
where they can see that, they're thinking in their mind, they've got a different picture in their mind. They don't have that picture in their mind, I can promise you. But if they can see that times 100 or times 300, and they can see the messages and videos from other dads, telling them, don't be afraid.
Yes.
This is the greatest blessing you'll ever get. If
Yes.
if we can provide that for them all in that same QR code, it will relieve so much fear. And then I think that the conversation might become a little bit different and a little deeper about whether they should be, in the words of the specialist, terminating their child.
Definitely. Well, I know that's one of Brady's passions even here on this podcast is speaking to dads who often I feel, I can't speak for dads, but it seems when all the moms are sharing the stories that there's a missing link of what indeed happens in the heart of a dad, of a grandmother, of a grandfather, sibling. All those different perspectives are so needed because otherwise you have nothing to pull from. You have no experience to pull from, and when you share that common experience, it's a really powerful thing.
I know it's a touchy subject because I don't want to, who am I to say that a dad shouldn't do that? Right. But at the same time, I know I'm speaking from experience and not just experience of my own child, but from Ella and I photographing so many families and me speaking with so many dads. I've become actually a specialist at this.
Hmm.
And I can speak with real honesty and integrity about what a dad is going to go through and then what they're feeling and what they're fearing they shouldn't,
Yes.
because it's going to be one of the greatest gifts of your entire life, and to not bring that gift, and here's another thing I tell dads. And if you're a dad that's watching this, hasn't had their child yet, you were chosen. You were chosen. That means that you've done things in your life and lived a life to be able to nurture that child, to take on that child and feel the love of that child. And if you give the same amount of love back, who knows what will happen.
Hmm.
So many people don't realize that there's almost in every profession in America and around the world, but I'm going to talk about America and Canada, for example, that there's so many people that have Down syndrome that are in those professions, whether they be attorneys, writers, athletes. There's so many. I mean, I've got a huge list of individuals, and I can promise you, when dad is gets that initial diagnosis and making that decision to terminate, they're not thinking that. They're not realizing that their child can go to university, that their child will speak, that the child can drive a car. None of that is going through their head.
No.
We need to get it going through their head.
That's right. Do you know I had an experience just this weekend? We went to film with Rod's Heroes, a family, and the little boy, he was 9 years old, the typical son. His little brother, Leo, has Down syndrome. And he had just watched a video of my two boys, who are 7 and 4. And the little 9-year-old said to his mom, wow, my brother's going to do one day what he's doing, what Jed is doing. He's going to walk and talk. And it was like it was the first time it had clicked in his head
Right.
that the future had many things ahead.
Right.
And that touched me so much because it's exactly what you're saying, Larry, that we only know what we know, right? And if society and materials are only telling us limitations, sadness, grief, that's all we know. But when you can
Those
see
stigmas were
into
born over 70 years ago.
exactly. It was a totally different reality. That's why when you were saying, as you've seen this laid out before you, for such a time as this is the season. The season is now for you to tell this message, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Thank God that was Ella and I were given this opportunity to do
Yes.
this.
I'm curious what have been some of the most difficult parts of the journey besides maybe those initial days that you were talking about. What has been the hardest part of this road for you?
I think limitations, society, I think still needs a little bit education about not limiting individuals with Down syndrome. So, starting with schools, teachers, kids on the playground, parents, because there's several times, and that's just from my personal experience, I will take Anna Rose to the playground, for example. And she's walking, but her balance is a little off still here and there. She falls all the time, but that's normal for us. But other parents, it seem like they fear of Anna Rose, and they tell their children like, "Oh, don't play with her because you don't want to hurt her." And it's kind of like, okay, well, she's not going to get hurt. It's okay, don't
Yeah.
worry. So they, inadvertently, because they don't mean to do that, they don't mean to separate her, isolate her, but they do because they don't know any other way.
Fear.
It's that fear. And in schools, I mean, we are blessed because the school she's in is just amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
teachers are just like, well, you just love them all.
Oh,
We're just so lucky. But we heard the stories from other parents that teachers limitate, oh, she can't do that, he can't do that, he needs to be here and doing something else, he's not going to do this. But if you limit a child, any child, typical child with disability, then that's how far they're going to go. They're not going to try to reach farther than that because you're telling them you can't.
right.
So changing that perception, that's I found that this is hard, and it's not only when they are little, it's all life. Like we met individuals with Down syndrome that are in their 30 and 40, and they are telling us, if you can put that in a message that we don't want empathy, we want opportunities.
Yes.
Because we want to find a job, and we are so more capable than just being a grocery bagger.
And
And
one person said, I got a university degree and nobody will hire me because they have Down syndrome.
yeah, so those limitations, throughout life, and what happens at age 22? They finish, graduate, and they're done with school. They are done, with their friends. Their friends move on to different places. Where did they go? Right? There's less help there for those individuals. So it's kind of talking about those limitations,
Yes.
not limiting, and that stems from employers, society, other families, with typical children, not limiting. Don't play with them,
Right.
don't hurt them. It's that's not what we want. We want that belonging, inclusion.
We have a good friend of ours, Tiffany McDowell, in Greensboro, High Point, North Carolina, and she opened a string of coffee shops. Now, most times you think of a nonprofit string of coffee shops that hire Down syndrome. Well, this is different. First time in the history of North Carolina that it's a for-profit company and they only hire individuals with Down syndrome. A for-profit company. And she wants to prove to all, and she is proving to other companies that are for-profit companies
Yes.
that you can hire.
Yes.
Yeah, they're trustworthy, they're on time, they do a great job, like they're just like anybody else.
Yes.
Maybe more so better because they're very focused on doing a good job. Right.
Needs
And
to
she
give
wants
them
to
the
prove that you
opportunity.
don't have to find a job for your child or your young adult that has Down syndrome just because you're looking for a nonprofit.
Right. Right.
The message has to get out to the for-profits that you can hire some really great people.
Yes.
And many of them, they don't have to be hired just to full towels in the back.
Right.
You
But
don't.
dignity.
Right.
Dignity,
Grace and dignity.
opportunity, respectability.
Grace and dignity.
And you don't really realize that until you've met as many as you have with Down syndrome to go, oh, this isn't just my daughter. This isn't just my son. These are people who are deserving and worthy and capable, right? And so it's exactly everything that you have spoken about is so true, and just kind of working towards that goal of laying that foundation that there needs to be opportunity. And as you were describing in the playground, not a fragility, right? Play, explore, learn, get your hands dirty. So, imagine someone, you've said so many beautiful things so far, but imagine now as we sort of conclude that there's someone listening, someone has been sent this podcast who has just gotten a diagnosis. Maybe their child was just born and it's a birth diagnosis, or they just got that call. In my case, that I remember rocked my world and I couldn't get out of bed. I really couldn't. What would be your message to that person in this moment?
Sure. I mean, for me, it's very clear. Don't fear that child. Don't fear that child. You have no idea the magic that has been bestowed upon you. You have been chosen to have this child. And the magic that you will share with that child every single day, every minute. I mean, it's miraculous. Everything that they said that was going to happen, none of it happened, except for the heart surgery. And even the first one failed. Right. And we had to go in for a second one earlier than they wanted to. But she's got a green light now. It's perfect now. And so, there's a level of trust there. But is that any different than if you had a child and they were born with some other thing that it wasn't diagnosed with? Or if they were 7 years old and they suddenly got cancer? Would you then terminate? No, you would fight for your child. Right? So why not fight for your child now?
Yes.
And you might just find that the greatest thing in your entire life is about to unfold in front of you. Yeah. And that's what's happened to us.
Same.
Oh my God. I mean, that's what's happened to us. And I love her. You know what she calls me? Dada boy. Daddy boy.
Precious.
Daddy boy. Daddy boy. And I have no idea where that came from, but she's so cute and so sweet.
Such a
And you know what? She loves to learn. She's talking well. She's learning. She's running. And she's doing everything that any other kid would do.
sounds like she loves her life.
She loves her life. And, our life is better because of her.
Absolutely.
And her siblings' life is better because of her.
14-year-old is fluent in sign language at 14.
Wow.
At a university level. She could have a conversation with someone that's totally deaf.
Yeah, and that started because Anna Rose.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I'm
now
so proud of her.
She can talk, but there was a moment we thought she would be nonverbal. So Layla just picked up the, sign language, and she's like, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to teach you guys. Like, good. And now she continues on, and she wants to make a career out of this. How positively she impacted Layla. And Juliet, our 9-year-old, she's her little protector.
She's her protector, yeah.
But I remember when you just mentioned earlier, like how siblings, like they don't know, like, oh, is she going to be able to do this? If she's going to be able to do that. So we noticed that with our older one, with Layla, that she was asking that, like, oh, I didn't know she can do it, and she's researching, and that's great. But with Juliet, it was different. She when we told her that she's going to have Down syndrome, that Anna Rose will have Down syndrome, Juliet asked just one question, and she's like, what color her hair will be? I was like, okay, like she didn't care at all. And that's how she lives life with Anna Rose. She just treats her
So
like
don't
every
think that it's
other.
going to be a
Yeah.
bad thing for your siblings, the
Yes.
other kids in your family. It's a matter of fact, after photographing hundreds families, over 100 families, Ella and I have found out that it's exactly the opposite of that.
Yeah, they benefit.
My gosh,
Yes.
the love that we see between siblings. Matter of fact, we're also starting a siblings page because
Wonderful.
we want to show how many, through these portraits, just how beautiful the love is between these siblings. It's almost like it's an extra bond.
Yes.
It is. It's like
Yes.
it's an extra bond.
Yes.
It's incredible.
And they are more humbled and they are more understanding as well. So I think it helps society overall.
I mean, do you need any more information? Is that enough? I mean,
I think we could go for hours and hours.
get ready for the
yeah.
greatest time of your life when you have your child,
And-
like anything else.
And just trust God and trust in your own guts. Yeah, I think that's the most important.
Yes.
Because, that journey, you don't know how it's going to go, what's going to be ahead, but just trust.
There's one more really important thing. Elle and I are both artists, right? And when you're artists, you live a very singular life.
Yes.
And I can tell you right now, we've met the Down Syndrome Society, the community
Yes.
of parents that have children with Down syndrome. And I'm telling you, I never dreamed that I would love a group of people so much.
I hear that.
And they are the kindest, most giving, intelligent, gracious people that I've ever met in my entire life.
Yes.
And by having your child, you will meet all of them. You will meet so many people that will want to open their doors to you, help you, share knowledge with you, share kindness with you.
Just be a friend.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
be a friend. You'll
It's
meet
like
the
an
greatest group of
insta-family.
people ever. Right. So it's like a massive added bonus.
Yes. It's very true.
It
I'm
is.
so incredibly blessed by the work that you're doing and encouraged by it. And I couldn't agree more about the community. And I feel as though, when all of us take the gifts that we've been given and share the message that you have so beautifully been sharing through your art, then what an impact we can all have as a community, when we take that ownership.
We're far from done, and we hope that a lot, including you, we want to photograph a lot more individuals, a lot more families.
Yes.
Families are important to photograph, even the whole family, because
Yes.
we want to prove that this love is in the family,
Yes. Yes.
right? It's not just about the individual.
Well, and looking through your gallery on your website, it's telling a story. It's not a storybook. It's real stories
Correct.
and real beauty and love that is just so beautifully portrayed. And I just commend you and thank you. And I'm grateful for you and to have the opportunity to speak to you about your mission. And we, of course, will have ways in the show notes for people to connect. But if people want to connect personally with you, are you open to that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We
Wonderful.
are an open book,
Wonderful.
and we're here to help others.
Yes. Well, that's very clear. It's pouring out of you.
I have found that Ella and I truly have had the path laid out in front of us, and we love it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we found our purpose.
I hear that. And I think that families who listen to this will hear that too. Thank you so much for sharing today. I'm
You're
so
welcome.
grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.